Here, if I die on this hill, metaphorically speaking, Mormons are trading our birthright as the Lord's peculiar people with some of the most radical doctrine in Christendom for a mess of evangelical fundamentalism, Sharia law, Bible edition, and theocratic corporatism. And all because we can't give up our avarice, homophobia, and xenophobia. This, despite the fact that the forebears of our faith face the exact same dogmatic intolerance and stubborn selfishness. Is this false superiority worth the cost? We're failing the trial of a literal antichrist, like Korihor, like Nehor, like all the others, as president. You all know what comes next, right? In case you don't, we've had a resurgence of locusts and earthquakes this year alone. We've now have feral frogs fleeing from Canada into Montana. How much more biblical does it have to get? Wake up! Credit to Elle May. A lot of her thoughts and analysis went into my ability to verbalize that first part, as well as I just did. Here comes the next part. Do you understand the wholesome laws we've been oppressing? The people we've been oppressing? The oppressors we've joined that would sooner end us, except we're somewhat useful? Why our loving, exalted, and just God would weep at this and not be able to smile at his church? I'm going to quote some people. The first is Brigham Young. Ready? Quote, "If a nation transgresses wholesome laws and oppresses any of its citizens or another nation, until the cup of its iniquity is full, through acts that are perfectly under its own control, God will hurl those who are in authority from their power, and they will be forgotten, and he will take another people, though poor and despised, a hiss and a byword among the popular nations, and instill into them power and wisdom, and they will increase and prosper until they in turn become a great nation on the earth." End quote. Mormons aren't the oppressed. We're not the hiss and the byword. We're the people oppressing the other nation and our citizens. I'm going to quote someone else. His name is Bob Pierce. He's a Baptist minister. And I'm quoting, "Let my heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God," end quote. Do you not think that the children we're putting in cages, even with our First Presidency's statement against it and literally nothing else we've done as a church to prevent it, are not oppressing wholesome laws or breaking the heart of heart of our God? I'm going to quote someone else. This is Jesus Christ himself in Matthew 19. I'm going to quote it verbatim. 13. "Then there were brought unto him little children, that he should put his hands on them and pray, and the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." End quote. We're taking the kingdom of heaven, tearing it from its family, and putting it into cages. And we think God smiles on that, or what? I'll quote Mahatma Gandhi now. Quote, "I like your Christ. I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ." End quote. Do you guys understand what the people of God did in olden days? In the Book of Mormon, in the Old Testament, and the New Testament? What we've always done, what we're supposed to do? In the olden days, they didn't put people in prison. They were put in prison for doing what was right. They didn't follow the law. Their existence was often against it. We're supposed to choose the harder right, not the easier wrong. I'm going to quote someone else. His name is Yehuda Bear, I hope I said his name right. He was a Holocaust survivor. Quote, "Thou shalt not be a victim. Thou shalt not be a perpetrator. But above all, thou shalt not be a bystander." End quote. Since we glorify our founding fathers, even the ones that weren't originals, here's Abraham Lincoln. Quote, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves." End quote. I'm going to quote one more person. His name was Mark Twain. Quote, "If Christ were here, there is one thing he would not be: a Christian." End quote. We've become like unto in many, maybe not all yet, but in many ways like unto all those other sects of Christianity that Christ condemned in the first vision. I'm poorly paraphrasing here, but what was it? Their lips are close to me, but their hearts are far from it, and they speak having a form of godliness, but deny the power thereof. Something like that, right? That's what we've become. We're supposed to choose collective unity and individual expression, not exploitative economics and criminalization of everything that isn't an oppressive version of normal. Heck, we aren't even supposed to choose normal. We were set apart to be peculiar. We're supposed to ask God for our own witness, not follow the prophet like blind and unthinking sheep, goats is the biblical term. Instead, we're supposed to love all liberally, be their true neighbors and family, not choose that we can't condone the existence of God's precious and infinitely valuable children. So instead, we kick out God's children, and his son goes with his siblings wherever they are. Why? Why is a false sense of superiority and a selective and inherently wrong reading of history worth more than the greatest access to the highest truths to exist in centuries? Y'all know that the founders, the actual ones, hated Christianity, right? They were Freemasons, and as a rule of thumb, they believed that religion and government were pure, the farther apart they remained. Even if they were noble, and yes, I said if deliberately, they deliberately designed a country to preserve slavery and minority rule. The economic anxiety caused by pro-abolition tensions in Britain's other colonies caused our framers to wage a war for the independence to maintain slavery and austerity, with the power closely held by rich, white, landowning men, the only people, legally people in their system. So is it worth it? Tell me, is it worth it? Is the death of the only known haven of life worth it? Is hastening the great and terrible day of the Lord and being among those destroyed in their wickedness worth it? Above all, is this the wage you want your life to purchase? I know my answer. I will stand with God's children, even if that standing happens outside his chapels. I will love all liberally and try to be like my Savior. And I will work my whole life to only hope that I can honestly say I did everything. What will you choose?